Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Couple of Punts Podcast and welcome to the Mailbag. We've been hinting at this for a few weeks and finally for the first time, certainly in 2021, but for the first time in about 8 or 9 months, we're opening the Mailbag. Thank you very much for getting your questions into us over the last few weeks. We really appreciate it. We want to keep up that momentum as well. This is going to be a weekly show. Hopefully, every Thursday we're going to try and do the mailbags and keep those questions coming. But thank you very much already for the guys who've already asked us some questions. We're going to get to a bunch of them in this episode, and we're really looking forward to it. Harry, I assume you're looking forward to it as much as I am because there's some great ones, isn't there?
There are some really good questions, yeah. As you said, we've said before, we love answering your questions. We love interacting with our listeners, the people who take the time out of their busy schedules to listen to us. So we love interacting with you and, giving back and giving, if you want a question answered, we'll try and answer it for you to the best of our abilities. So we love doing this kind of stuff. So we want to make it a regular thing, as you've just said.
Absolutely. This is because the thing is, we want to continue putting as many podcast episodes out as we can. Obviously, during the season, we've committed to 2 a week. We want to continue doing 2 a week. You'll always get one. No matter what, you'll always get 1 episode per week. Minimum, obviously, when it comes to draft week, for example, we did kind of 5 last year and stuff like that. Obviously, we'll build it up. Obviously, Super Bowl week next week, we're going to have more. But even in the quiet times, even just during kind of the kind of quieter free agency period times, we still want to do 2. This is an opportunity to get that second podcast in. But obviously, this podcast episode doesn't happen without your questions. So if you just if you can follow a Couple of Punts on Twitter straight away, that'd be brilliant. That's the starting point. And just fill us DMs up. We might not always reply to you, but we do see them. We do check the DMs. So yeah, just fire your question in there. No question is daft. Just anything you want to ask, NFL related or even not. Get it in there and just keep this episode going. Keep this series going because we love hearing from you, and this is probably the best way. Probably is the best way. On that note, though, because such is the NFL world right now, things are a little bit wild. It is 2021. We will be getting to your questions. I think there's 6 or 7 to answer in this episode, but we do have to start with a little bit of news. And I say a little bit of news. It's actually quite some big news. Broke about 2 hours ago. It's Deshaun Watson related, and you've probably seen it already, but we figured we have to react to this. It all started yesterday, in fact, when David Culley was announced as the new head coach of the Houston Texans, a long-time assistant coach in the NFL, come from the Baltimore Ravens. My immediate reaction to David Culley's signature was, first of all, who? Second of all, that is extremely uninspiring. Harry, I'm sure you agreed.
Yeah, my also reaction was, what does Eric Bieniemy have to do to get an NFL head coaching gig? It was incredible that he was yet again appeared to be passed upon. But it's good to see David Culley's kind of got his shot. As Ross said, he's a veteran of the league. He is 65 this year. He's entering his 28th year in the NFL next year, or this next league year, current year, which is incredible kind of long service. So it's really good that he's finally got his shot to be a head coach. But I mean, the circumstances could be a lot better, couldn't they?
They really could because this afternoon, I'm not sure whether he got there first, but I've got Ian Rappaport's tweet up. It's either him or Schefter. I'm not sure. It always is.
It was Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp said it.
Oh yeah. To be fair, he did say it in the dispute, didn't he?
And then they both tweeted it out. Because Rappaport quote tweeted himself saying, as first reported by Shannon Sharp on Undisputed.
Right, okay. Shannon. I'll read the tweet out of him. So, starts. Sources. Apparently that's Shannon Sharp. Sources say Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson has requested a trade from Houston. He has a no-trade clause, and by virtue of his contract, he would decide what places would be acceptable. So, we all thought it was a crazy suggestion that Deshaun Watson would be traded by the Houston Texans. There's no way on earth that franchise would do that. It would be a terrible situation for them to be in. But there was never any smoke without fire. There had to be something in them rumours, and it would appear, because obviously, as Ian Rappaport went on to say, this Shannon Sharp, that this has actually been known for quite a few weeks. And Deshaun Watson put this trade request in potentially 2 or 3 weeks ago. Every single rumour has been true, hasn't it? Every single rumour from the get-go.
It has. It has every single bit of kind of he wasn't happy, he was in rest. The stories about him not being able to be reached by the Texans management is obviously true because this is what this has been in the process for him for weeks now. And everything makes sense. Kind of the real story of it came out ever since they refused to interview Bieniemy for the first round of head coaching gigs. That was a couple of weeks ago. I would kind of, I guess, as soon as it was clear that Bieniemy wasn't being kind of interviewed for that head coaching job, that he kind of immediately handed in his request there and then. And they kind of kept it private to see if they could talk him around, and they haven't been able to.
Yeah, the timeline kind of stacks up for that, doesn't it? It kind of works out. And maybe even, I mean, as much as we talked about David Culley and him getting the job, and we're happy for him, and as you say, he's had many, many years in the league, it kind of does make sense, because it would appear that obviously the Texans have spoken to a heap of potential coaches over the last few weeks in interviews. They did eventually speak to Bieniemy. It would appear that every single coach who went through the interview process was made aware of the situation before any of us. They all knew that Deshaun Watson probably wouldn't be part of their plans. Does that explain why they've got a relative unknown who's got the job? Have the big names, you Robert Saleh's, or to be fair, I'm not even sure Saleh even got an interview, which is bizarre.
He didn't. The only two head coaches to not get an interview were the two hottest coaches in the NFL, in Robert Saleh and Eric Bieniemy.
Bizarre. I know they backtracked and eventually did speak to Bieniemy, didn't they? But I'm to be fair, I guess Jets probably just snapped up Saleh before they even got a chance to try the second round. But yeah, these big hot coaches, they've just they've clearly just not brought their A game. That's what tells me. I just don't think they brought their A game to these interviews, because news spreads within the league as well. Because I imagine front offices have known this for quite a while. That's the thing, because it just spread like wildfire. So these big name coaches will look at the other jobs and going, all right, I'll go to the Texans interview, but I'm not putting a lot of effort into this, because I'm not even sure I particularly want this. And it kind of, because we've banged the Bieniemy drum for months now about him getting a job. It seemed obvious he was going to get a head coaching role. Obviously, he's not now, unless something ridiculous happens in the next few weeks. Eric Bieniemy, bear in mind, his interview, last week?
Yes, I believe so.
In the midst of a Super Bowl run with the Chiefs, his mind's going to be elsewhere anyway. I mean, I just don't believe, knowing full well that Deshaun Watson isn't going to be there, and now the Texans look like a 3-4 year rebuild at best. There's no way he's taken half this week to prepare for that interview, is there?
No, there's absolutely not. And it's like coaches like him, like Saleh, if you're a young, up and coming, potential head coach, you don't want to take this job, because a lot of the NFL, a lot of it is do what have you done for me lately league. If he has a disastrous time, if any head coach has a disastrous time at the Houston Texans, they'll almost have to restart again and have to work maybe up as a coordinator and do that for another couple of years till you get another chance. So you don't want to ruin your kind of stock joining this apparently sinking ship, which, as we said, great respect to new Texans head coach, Collie. He has worked his whole life, and this might be the last real chance he's got to take up a head coaching job. So, as fans of the NFL, we really hope it does work out for him, because he's worked his entire adult life. He's put 27 years into the NFL. As Colts fans, we hope it doesn't, but hey, we'll put that aside just for this particular time. We hope it does go well for him, but this may have been his last chance to get a head coaching gig, which explains why he's the one that's took it on and no one else really has. We had Matt Eberflus as well, our kind of defensive coordinator. Glad he didn't go now as well, because it would have been a horrible situation for him.
Yeah, and we've got no coaches left, so don't leave.
Please stop pillaging us, please.
Please.
No one on the offensive side of the ball.
No, we've got nobody. Start from scratch. Different argument for a different day. Yeah, it looks pretty bleak for Houston right now. It really does look pretty bleak. Actually, it's great for the teams in the AFC South. It's great for Colts, great for Jags, great for Titans. Looking at this, I think Derrick Henry's been quoted today saying it's a great thing for us. Of course, it's a great thing for the Colts, great thing for Trevor Lawrence coming through. He's got a lot less to play now. I've just realised we've missed out on two Clemson championship winning QBs in the same division. That would have been interesting, watching them going against each other twice a year. Yeah, they may still play. I mean, they'll still play, but obviously, probably not two times a year, unless he does fancy coming to Indianapolis, Deshaun. I mean,
we wouldn't be against it.
I don't think the Houston Texans are going to ratify that. But yeah, it does look like it's going to be a bleak few years for the Houston Texans. It's going to be very interesting now to see if the likes of JJ Watt sticks around this year. He's the glue that holds that team together. If JJ Watt goes in free agency this year, I mean, Jesus, that team's going to have no identity at all. It's going to be really, really poor. What they're going to do for quarterbacks? Name the Houston Texans starting quarterback next year now. I have no idea.
whoever they get in a potential trade.
You'd imagine it'd be someone
yeah.
from the draft, but I mean, it's so difficult, so difficult right now. It's going to be a tough one, and yeah, for his first job, I mean, I've got a few stats here. David Culley's got it all to do, and the thing with David Culley as well, at least they did bring in an offensive-minded head coach. So I think they did try, but it's just they were scraping the bottom of the barrel so much because the big names have gone. It's tough. He's spent a lot of his time as a wide receiver coach, kind of as his speciality. Spent a long time in the Andy Reid coaching tree. A long time. I think it's like 16, 18 years, something like that. He was under Andy Reid. However, his success rate's not been very good, if we're honest, as an assistant. There was a stat that PFF put out today. He was with the Eagles between 2006 and 2012. The Chiefs 2013, 2016, and obviously the Ravens 2019 and 2020. In all that time, he did not coach a wide receiver who earned a PFF grade above 80. That's not great. That's not great for a wide receiver unit, which has been depleted as well of one of the best receivers in the league last year and is pretty void of talent beyond Brandon Cooks. A heavy situation for the Houston Texans right now.
Yeah, that really is not great. That's really kind of thrown me back because I was about to say, if he's been with Andy Reid for X amount of years and stuff, then he's clearly doing something right because Andy Reid is one of the better coaches in the NFL. He's one of the historically great coaches when it comes to winning percentage. He's one of the most likable kind of head coaches. So he's doing something right to stay in that system, but that's a stat and a half that. So who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he was under him at the Chiefs, but I mean, they did let him go to Baltimore.
Yeah,
so
ultimately.
Yeah, before they kind of got great. So, yeah, it's not great. It's not great. We're sorry. If you're a Houston fan listening right now, we just sorry, really. Speaking of Watson himself, obviously I've got the betting odds up here in terms of his next move. Obviously it's shifted a little bit due to what's happened today. The New York Jets currently favoured at 9-4. At 7-2 equally. Houston Texans, he could still go back. Well, let's be honest, it doesn't mean he's definitely moving. A trade request does not mean a trade. The Houston Texans have still got to ratify a trade no matter what it is. Watson gets the choice of where it is, essentially. Only he can say yes because that no trade clause. But Houston could play some weird game of hardball. I wouldn't really put anything past Houston Texans at this point. They're 7-2 for him to stay. Also 7-2 and kind of second favourites of the Carolina Panthers now, which is a really intriguing possibility, which I've discussed. I think we may have discussed it last week, but I've certainly written about it on Sporting Life. Miami Dolphins 8-1, New England Patriots 12-1, San Francisco 49ers 16-1, and then you get to the Bears at 25, and it's 25 bar. Right now, gun to your head, where do you think he ends up in 2021?
I think we've seen the kind of, you use the no smoke without fire kind of analogy to talk about him actually wanting to get traded, with the fact that he has a no trade clause, and that's the key to this. Deshaun Watson is going wherever he wants to go. That's part of his contract. They are the favourites, but I think that he's been not vocal out in to the public, but vocal to his kind of people around him that he wants to go to the Jets. So I think that's kind of where he's gonna go. But I think the Carolina Panthers is a really interesting prospect. Really interesting when you talk about it's a growing team and the weapons that he'll have there.
I think they can put together an exciting package for him as well, because the thing with Carolina is they do kind of have the ace in the hole in the fact that they can, and dare I say should, offer Christian McCaffrey in that trade. Look, I know he's the face of the franchise. I'm aware of that. I know he's an incredible player, but Deshaun Watson, you've got him for 15 years. Christian McCaffrey, you've got him for 4 more years. If I'm being realistic, I love him to bits. I love McCaffrey, but even this year, he played about 4 games. If that is the way he plays football, it's incredible, but there's no longevity to it. He's an asset, but he's not going to be an asset for that much longer, in my opinion. So it is an interesting one. I mean, the Texans are a team that need some kind of offensive spark. But be an interesting. I mean, it's going to be a big trade anyway. But it'd be a blockbuster trade, wouldn't it, if McCaffrey went the other way?
It would be. And it's not unprecedented for the Carolina Panthers under David Tepper to trade away their star player. well, not trade away, just to get rid of their star player rather, because they kind of got rid of that old guard of like they had Thomas Davis and Cam Newton, kind of real kind of stalwarts of the last great Panthers team of 2015, I think, when I went to the Super Bowl. I mean, I don't know how. You'd be interested in it, or certainly if you're Carolina, you're trying to give Teddy Bridgewater in the first, like for like and a first round pick, because Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey, Deshaun Watson, and the other one whose name escapes me, the wide receiver, that is an incredible kind of offensive unit.
It would. But I think, as we've said many times before, I think it's much easier to pick up a running back.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And you build around your quarterback ultimately. So if it did mean McCaffrey, what would be an offer? I think you'd still have to give a first if you gave McCaffrey. No matter what, that 8th overall pick would have to go. I'm pretty sure it's 8. They pick at 8 or 9. Certainly the top 10 anyway. So yeah, if it was the Panthers, you go first rounder, McCaffrey, probably Teddy as well. Maybe even another first. I mean, it's going to be a huge offer, whatever it is that prizes them away. Because as much as Deshaun Watson gets last decision on it, the Texans still need to be compensated enough for them to ratify anything. Or they could just look. It'd be a horrible situation for them where they've got to pay him $40 million a year just to sit on the sidelines, but they don't want to get completely shortchanged either. It's just a bad situation for Houston to be in, and this is really. Someone made the point today. Today's kind of the dawn of a new era in sport generally, I think, because this is maybe, bear in mind, we're less than a year since he signed that contract. This might be one of the biggest examples of player power I've ever seen. Anyone's ever seen. This is incredible, really.
Well, when you couple that with what happened in the same city in a different sport with James Harden essentially saying, I'm going to, whether he was wearing a fat suit or not, because he's lost a lot of weight in the pictures now that he's moved to Brooklyn. But he essentially, he put his tools down and got traded. Deshaun Watson now has said he wants to go and get traded. These are two bona fide stars. It really kind of puts the emphasis on player power, kind of the new wave of sport, the new wave of the NFL, where the power is being taken away from the billionaires, and players have more power of their career, which is better kind of for everyone, because you get to see stars playing where they're happy. And we get to see these massive blockbuster trades that, really kind of drive off seasons now, because this kind of because before it was kind of Matt Stafford was the kind of the number one quarterback that everyone wants. When I got Deshaun Watson, he becomes the number one, which pushes Stafford down the line, and it pushes the other pushes Winston down the line. It pushes there's the ripple effects just from Deshaun Watson requesting a trade are incredible. Regardless of whatever team he goes to, it affects almost the entire NFL.
Yeah, everyone else lost value today.
Yeah,
basically, which from a Colts perspective, wanting to get Matt Stafford isn't a bad thing.
No,
but it's a bad thing from the Lions' perspective and things like that. It's a huge knock-on effect. This it's going to be the story of the offseason by a distance, especially seeing as Aaron Rodgers went on the Pat McAfee show the other day and pretty much put a nail in any kind of rumors that he's going to leave. As we kind of suspected, it was a very reactionary comment after the NFC Championship game, which is fair enough, all things considered. So yeah, Deshaun Watson absolutely going to be the story of the offseason, as I say, and we'll follow it all the way. If you have any questions about the situation, further questions about the Deshaun Watson situation, or trades generally, stick them in the mailbag. We'll answer them next week. Speaking of which, shall we get into it? For the first time since I think April last year, we're going to go into the mailbag and answer some of your questions. So first up, thank you very much for sending these in again. Obviously, we know a bunch of you. We really do appreciate it. The loyalty is humbling, isn't it? It's humbling.
It is.
It really is. First up, we've got 2 questions from a very dear friend, Adam Clapham. Very sad that we can't watch the Super Bowl with you this year, Adam, but we'll get there again. We'll get there again sometime in the future. He's got 2 questions. The first one, bear in mind he is a Green Bay Packers fan. Is Aaron Rodgers the most talented quarterback of all time? Harry, I'll let you start on this one.
Up until about 3 years ago, I think the answer for this is kind of not undeniably yes, but I think it's kind of a strong yes. And, the things that Aaron Rodgers has done for his entire career, we have never seen a quarterback do before. The way, he's able to manipulate his arm, have an incredible amount of release angles. Just the fact that he's completed like the most Hail Mary passes in NFL kind of history. There's got at least 2 or 3 of real kind of, Hail Mary is a kind of a low percentage play. not when Aaron Rodgers does it. And, you combine all that arm talent with, his ability to read the game, and, he's maneuverable enough with his legs. He can do enough with his legs to, to create space. And, when he needs to rush, he can rush. Yes, that was all up until about, I'll say 2 years ago, because we saw a quarterback out of Texas Tech come and take the league by storm like no other quarterback has ever done.
Yeah, I can't disagree, really. He absolutely was. And, obviously that was kind of the thing going into last week's game, wasn't it, really? I think in a lot of people's eyes of the last 20 years, it was the greatest quarterback of all time going up against the most talented guy, because however great Tom Brady is, can't really hold a candle to what Aaron Rodgers could do with the football. That's just a fact. Neither could Peyton Manning, neither could these greats, John Elway, neither could Brett Favre. In terms of actual talent and what he could do, the way he can manipulate football, I had never seen anything like Aaron Rodgers. I don't think anyone had. Until, as you say, Patrick Mahomes came through with the Chiefs a couple of years ago, had that incredible second year in the league, won the MVP, got to the AFC Championship game, just an absolute weapon on offense, because he's an offensive weapon more so than I think any other quarterback has ever been. Usually they're the point guard, aren't they? But he's not. He is, but he's going to dunk on you as well. He's incredible, and I think the thing that maybe sets him apart as well is he's granted the age thing. Look, I'm aware there's 13 years difference, and obviously it will not always be the case, but I can't remember Aaron Rodgers being as effective with his legs as Mahomes is now. He's still mobile, and even to this day, he scores touchdowns. He is still mobile, but I don't think even, granted, we didn't see him for his first 4 years, which obviously is a little caveat as well, but I can't remember Rodgers ever being as aggressive or as capable of ripping off kind of 30, 40-yard plays with his legs. I think that sets him apart as well. It just makes the defense think about something else. When you've got everything else going on, you've also got to think about the fact he can attack you on the ground. Just the pass selection he has. I mean, in an NFC title game, to throw an underarm ball to Travis Kelce for a touchdown, I mean, we've just never seen things like that before, have we?
We've not, and I've never seen Aaron Rodgers run a speed option.
No.
They literally run, designated run plays and speed option and read option plays to Patrick Mahomes, which shows how much of a real threat he is with his legs. I remember kind of last year in the AFC Championship game where Patrick Mahomes had that long run down the sideline against the Titans, which really kind of turned the tide of that game. You think he's running out of play, he fake slides or fake runs out of bounds, cuts back upfield and takes it for 30 yards into the end zone. He is everything you want in a modern day quarterback. He is just incredible. The amount of talent that the kid has, because he's still a kid, is incredible. And there's I suppose we talk about talent, not necessarily to caveat it, but he does have Andy Reid. He's got incredible weapons on that offense, but no one finds them. Just no one else could find them the way Patrick Mahomes can find them. The ability to get the ball to his playmakers, like you said, whether it be underarm throws, traditional passes, throwing with his left hand at sometimes, just because he can. And, I know everyone does it now, but the real kind of first person to throw proper no-look passes, it's just incredible. And as a defense, the league hasn't figured how to stop him yet. And I don't think we maybe ever will.
No.
The one thing you say about Aaron Rodgers, just to kind of a little bit, was he does have an attitude. You can't, as great as a player he is, and, a lot of these maverick players, they do have, that personality side to them, and it is what makes them a great player. We've seen Aaron Rodgers kind of check out of games before. It's kind of the stat where he's got the most throwaways, I think, in NFL history, because if he doesn't like the play sometimes, he'll just throw the ball away, which, does not get the ball picked off, but a lot of the time it also can be seen as petulance. But Mahomes doesn't have that. And I suppose that does count towards being a talented quarterback, because as the leader of a team, as the quarterback has to be, you have to be switched on all the time. You have to be the one to rally the troops, as we've seen Mahomes did last week. The NFL Films tweeted out with McCole Hardman.
On the sideline.
Muffs a punt. They're down 9-0 in a playoff game. And the first person over to him to get him going again was Mahomes, was the leader of the team.
Yeah, I think it plays a part. It certainly plays a part. I think by Rodgers' kind of own recognition, he's never been the most vocal guy either. He's never been the biggest biggest team guy, to the point where he kind of says only really kind of this year he's kind of taken on that role. You wouldn't think so, would you? Because he's been there for God knows how many years, since 2005, and you think he'd be the centerpiece of the team, and he is in the media's eyes, in terms of our eyes, but apparently in the actual locker room, where you've got 53 guys in there. Apparently, it's only kind of this year he's become the kind of guy who does the speech after the game and stuff. And usually it's been a defensive guy, or back in the day it was Charles Woodson, a great player in his own right. But it's only now he's kind of becoming the leader of that team, really, in terms of a personality, I guess. And I think that's a talent in itself, I think.
Yeah.
And the fact that Mahomes kind of already seems to be doing that at the age of 24, 25, it's insane, really. It's insane what he's doing. And through kind of not too much fault of his own, but Rodgers is beatable. He just is beatable. Patrick Mahomes at this point just doesn't seem beatable at times. He really doesn't. His record in the NFL is absolutely ludicrous. He's had 53 games in the NFL as a starter. His record is 44-9. He's yet to lose 10 games in the NFL. And the most incredible stat of all for me, yes, he has those 9 losses. He is yet to lose a game in the NFL by more than a score.
You're never down when Mahomes is there. There's never a chance you can't win that football game. It's a lot of times you lose by one score is, by having bad luck. I think, a couple of those losses have been in the overtime when they haven't seen the ball. The Patriots lost. They lost on overtime without seeing the ball.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, it's one of my favourite stats in NFL history, that. The fact that he's never lost a game by more than a score. The last time he lost by more than a score, lost by more than 8 points, it was in 2016 at college, Texas Tech. And incredibly, he lost by 56 that day. So things happen. Yeah. He clearly took that one personally.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on from that one. But yeah, just to finish off, Aaron Rodgers, he was the most talented quarterback of all time. But right now, I think it's real. And he's MVP this year, quite rightly the MVP, and he's doing incredible things at 37. And his trajectory, he's going to play till he's 42, 43. Might be even better than Tom Brady at that point. That's very possible. But you can't deny what Patrick Mahomes is doing right now in terms of talent, I don't think. Right then, second question, madam. I'll just read this as it's written. Discuss a UK franchise would be interesting. I realise that wasn't really a question. It's not really a question, but it is worth discussing, absolutely. So, it's been the biggest talking point in UK NFL for the last 15 years, really, but it's gone really quiet, hasn't it? Obviously, this year's just COVID and stuff. There's been no Wembley games, which was a massive shame because I would have gone this year. Been a couple of times. It is fantastic, the international games at Wembley. They really are superb. And Twickenham, of course, now as well. This was really loud 7-8 years ago, wasn't it, when the Jags became the home team? They were going to have at least a game every year. Did that even extend to 2 games? I forget. But at least the home.
I think it was going to. I think it was. Yeah. It's going to It was from this year, and I think
it was the plan, wasn't it? At least the home game every year. Though the Jags were going to be London's team. Obviously, people put 2 and 2 together. Thought London Jaguars are happening. Shahid Khan, he's the Fulham owner. Makes a lot of sense. It kind of went quiet, didn't it? It kind of went quiet a couple of years ago. And what is your take right now? 1, do you think it'll ever happen? And 2, theoretically, if it does happen, what would be the best way to do it?
Yeah, they kind of went quiet ever since the Jags went to the AFC Championship game. Which, it's something that I've kind of believed for a while, is they're never going to move a good team over here. It's going to have to be a proper basement dwelling team. And considering they're about to get Trevor Lawrence, might happen for a while. The plan for the NFL is always expansion. They're always looking for ways to expand the NFL, to appeal to new markets, to ultimately gain more revenue. It's not only they were looking to expand into Europe through England, they have the Mexico game now every year, which obviously want to expand through South America. That's still North America, but explore that kind of Latin American market. So I think there is going to be expansion. I just think logically it doesn't come to the UK first. I think, with how American sports works, I think you have to look at potentially going to Canada. That just makes a lot more sense because I know it's moving to a different country, but logistically makes a hell of a lot more sense. It already works in terms of the NBA, the NFL, the MLS, the MLB, MLB.
And the MLS.
Yeah, and NFL in the middle there, but I think you have to look there. I know they do have the CFL, but they play at 2 different times of the year, so it doesn't even, it doesn't even counteract each other there. And I think it just makes sense to do that first because, as I say, it's different countries. But you just think of just on a kind of a base level, the tax implications of, where would you register your permanent address if you're in the UK which it would have to be because you'd have to be there for over 12 weeks of the year, which I believe is the cutoff point for UK taxes. I think that's when you start paying tax in this country if you live here for over 12 weeks of the year. You know, that's you'd have to pay. Everyone would have a much higher tax rate where compared to America, where capital gains tax varies from state to state, and there are a lot of free agents do sign in places where you don't have a lot of capital gains tax. So that's just one.
Let's not forget, if it was Jacksonville, Florida has almost no tax. You don't really pay tax in Florida. Yeah,
exactly. So that's just one of the many financial implications that kind of come to it. So, you know, I think expansion does come in the NFL. Doesn't start off in England, even though it is the gateway to Europe.
Yeah, they tried it, didn't they? I mean, look, it was before our time, really. But NFL Europe was a thing. Like, it did happen. It was Oliver Luck. It was Andrew Luck's father who kind of was the godfather of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Obviously, he did great things at least for about 6 months of the XFL, and hopefully that picks up again. That's a completely different discussion. But yeah, they tried NFL Europe, and it was okay. It was, from all accounts, it was okay for a few years, but it never really. It was always going to be a very low level league. That's just how it was. In terms of expansion, I agree. I think a Canada team makes the most sense. Stick a team in Toronto, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. It's so close to New York as well. You've got a little derby with Buffalo there straight away. You've got the Niagara Falls derby right there. Yeah, Mexico's one. The thing with Mexico is they've had a lot of trouble with it, even like the field, that's it seems. Even the field quality at the Azteca and things like that. I would say Mexico is probably lower priority, even though obviously they go after it every year. It'd be interesting to see how much revenue they really get from that game. I look at what the NBA do in China. The money they're getting from China and the revenue they're doing there and the big push they're going for it, I don't think the NFL will ignore that for long. And I think they'll certainly consider that. Obviously, the MLB tried Japan as well. They've got a big presence in Japan. I think China's one they'll seriously consider. In terms of the UK, though, which is obviously what this question is geared at, currently we get, 4 games, 2 games at Wembley, 2 games at Twickenham, 8 teams coming over a year. Honestly, I'm happy with that. I think we've probably hit the sweet spot, if I'm honest. And maybe if you want to extend to 6, fine. If they made it 8, then you'd have essentially a home team anyway, because you'd have 8 games. You'd have a home schedule, which could work.
Yeah.
But I think the only way that would maybe work is if they did maybe more up and down the country. I couldn't see 8 games in London. I'd be very surprised to see that. You could do a few at the Etihad maybe, or
and we don't want that anyway, because everything goes to London. That's not the center. That's not the center of the UK. That's, you know.
I wouldn't want. I think 4's fine. If they're going to do 4 in London right now, that's fine as it is. If they do any more, if they go to 6, they go to 8. Let's spread those other 4 around. I reckon. Have some in Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, wherever, Scotland.
Yeah, there are some. You know, Scotland's got quite a big following, especially with the Brown sponsor whose name escapes me. But some of the Scottish kind of, we talk about uni ball teams or senior ball teams. That's one of the best teams in the UK. So, you know, they have to travel to London when everything else happens. So, you know, spread it around a bit.
Yes, send a Boston team to Dublin. You know, there's things you can do. There's things you can do that make sense.
Notre Dame were going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I know the Patriots don't quite have the same connotations as the Celtics, but still a Boston team. Yeah. But yeah, currently, as it stands, as I say, I think 4 games is fine. And I'm not overly fussed about the Jags being a home team either, because I don't think that really works at this point, especially now we've had a year out of it because of COVID and the fact that we've not had UK games this year. We've not had the Jags over. NFL has grown massively this year without the international games. You can the biggest. If people don't believe NFL is growing in the UK, and there is a lot of people, mainly on Facebook, who don't believe that the NFL is growing, and they'll be out in force next week. You better believe. Just look at what Sky Sports did. Sky Sports don't give away a channel for 5 months to a sport that's not growing.
Yeah,
there is no way. There are major sports in the UK that have not had that treatment. It's a major thing that they have NFL on round the clock 24/7. It's growing massively. And the thing with that is, like we have, like many of our followers are, we know a bunch of our followers, we know you all follow a team. Some of you support the Jags, yeah, but I don't think you support the Jags because they played in London. That's not how it is. You've already got your teams. It doesn't matter. I would much rather see the Colts over here than with the Jags. I'm not going to root for the Jags. People get their allegiances, and the fact it's got so big now and people are so tribal about it already, because there is that. You look at the amount of fan groups that are around, it's huge. I'm not particularly fussed about the Jags being a home team. I think they can probably knock that on the head, if I'm honest. Just give us 4 different teams every year. 8 different teams every year, should I say, in a rotation, and we're laughing. And finally bring the Packers over, because they're the only team who haven't been over yet so far.
Yeah, it's quite mental. We've had the 31, and one of the most storied franchises in the NFL hasn't come over here yet. This is also, we're also forgetting the fact that some players love coming over here. A lot of players have no interest, and what you then alienate there is, yes, the UK has an NFL team. It will not be able to attract the free agents potentially, because some Americans won't want to kind of live here. It's a completely different country, regardless if we speak the same language. Culturally, completely different. On the flip side, I will say there is a potential for as much as the team wouldn't be as supported because everyone has their groups. There is a potential for you talk about kind of the NFL and endorsements. If a player was to kind of come over here, a real star, and they would have to give up some of their pulling power in America, they could to be the face of the NFL in the kind of the UK and Europe. The sponsorship and the brand stuff is incredible. And that is maybe going to potentially draw. That's the only real draw you could have, because you just post-COVID, you can just go on holiday to England if you really want to go as a player.
Yeah, it's a nice thought, but we'll just wait till Neil Reynolds' son's old enough.
Yeah, he can come out if he comes over here to start a London franchise. Maybe I'll get behind that, a UK franchise. But
yeah, I hope it's as good as his dad says he is. I hope he's good. Yeah,
he throws the ball, which in England is already 10 times better than what everyone else is doing. So
true. I've not seen many games, but true. Right, let's move on then. Let's answer a question. Again, 2 questions from this one. Dave Shaw, podcast legend, podcast Hall of Famer Dave Shaw, one of our favorite ever guests. Are you giving Lamar, as in Lamar Jackson, a Deshaun Watson kind of contract? If so, they're probably going to lose players, and therefore, do you think that Lamar could do better with less? Very, very interesting question. Obviously, Lamar is coming to the time where he's going to be extended by Baltimore. A Deshaun Watson kind of contract, which we kind of referenced earlier, $200 million, 5 years, $40 million a year, second biggest NFL history for a quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes. Harry, what is your take on this? Because this is not as clear cut as people think, is it? When Lamar Jackson comes around to contract talks,
it's not, especially in this year of all years. Am I paying him Deshaun Watson money? I am, but I am going to ask him if I can pay him next year or the year after, because of the way the salary cap is at the moment. It is believed to fall between about $175 to $180 million for the 2021 season. That is a quite noticeable shrink from.
It's going to be. It's potentially a $25 million drop. It is. It's a lot.
On a cap that people were projecting was going to go to like 220. So it's a 25 million actual drop, but it's almost 45 million when you talk about like kind of the projected cap room. I mean, God, you look at the Saints situation now, they're 90 million over the cap already because of, over the 175 kind of cap, because
obviously Sean Payton's going to be a quarterback next year.
He is. But I am paying him that kind of money, because if you don't have a quarterback in this league, you don't have anything. And Lamar Jackson, regardless, is one of the better quarterbacks we've got in this league. He has the ability to win football games, which is, would say second to none, but not many quarterbacks have the ability to win games like Lamar Jackson has done. And he's proved it over kind of multiple years. And he's finally got his first playoff win.
Yeah, I agree. Like, to be honest, I don't want to pay him the same as Watson. I would pay him a little bit less if I could. Like, I'd want to be between 35 and 40. I wouldn't want to hit 40, if I'm honest. I don't think he's at that level. But he's not far off. He's certainly not far off. And the thing that kind of gives Lamar and the Ravens a big positive here for me is just the way he plays. Obviously, it's so dependent on the run game. What is one of our long-time mottos on the Couple of Punts? Don't pay running backs. Don't pay running backs. What the Ravens can do is go pretty cheap with the run game. Because he needs solid receivers around him, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't necessarily need superstars in the offense. It's not like if Lamar Jackson couldn't run, if he was a pocket passer and he was the same level of player, still won the MVP last year, but he was a pocket passer dependent on his receivers essentially. No, I wouldn't want to pay him in this climate, to be honest, because you're going to have to get a run game no matter what. So you're going to have to pay quite good money for a running back. Because Lamar's so great himself in terms of the run game, he's the catalyst for it all. I mean, they've let go of Mark Ingram this year. It's not a huge deal, really. They've got J.K. Dobbins for the next few years anyway, and they can kind of bring in a bit of a conveyor belt of talent, running back wise, quite cheap. We're going to talk about free agents in a sec. Quite a decent little class of free agent running backs this year, for example, all pretty cheap, really. They're not going to get the top end. You're going to get your second tier, but that's all you need because Lamar is the threat. They can be your second and third guy, and they can pick up yardage when everyone's worried about Lamar. And receivers, you can go relatively cheap. You've got Hollywood Brown for a couple of years anyway, on a cheap deal. Outside of him, they don't have a lot anyway, do they? To be honest, no. They don't do a hell of a lot. You've got kind of Miles Boykin type players, not going to command a lot of money. And that offense can keep rolling like that. You've got to keep the offensive line ticking over. That's one thing. That's where a lot of your money does have to go. But yeah, for those reasons, I think it is possible to pay him good money and get away with it, essentially.
Yeah, and look, we've seen what happens when you piss off one franchise quarterback. They are so rare. Not everyone is going to be Patrick Mahomes. Not everyone can be what Tom Brady is. Not everyone's going to be an Aaron Rodgers. Not everyone's going to be a Peyton Manning. Not everyone's going to be a Drew Brees. When you have a franchise quarterback, you have to do everything you possibly can to try and keep them happy, because we've seen what happens when you never find that franchise quarterback. And we've seen what happens when you mistreat a franchise quarterback. Look, we think Matt Stafford is one of the most talented guys we've ever seen in this league. He's incredible. The Detroit Lions have mismanaged him and they've won nothing. You talk about, teams that have never had that true franchise quarterback. Up until Baker Mayfield, the Cleveland Browns never had a franchise quarterback, and the jury's still semi-out on Baker Mayfield. But the Cleveland Browns would have murdered for a guy like, Lamar Jackson. Yes, he's not a conventional quarterback. He can still win games. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance in this league. You can't be so frivolous with these guys. You have to, when a good one comes along, you have to almost do everything you can to keep them. And if that means overpaying them, you kind of have to do that sometimes, because they, especially as you say, Lamar Jackson, the way he plays the game, you can scrimp on your star wide receivers. You can scrimp on your star running backs. You don't have to pay the most expensive positions outside there. You can invest it into Lamar, a couple of running back by committee kind of stuff, and then build the big uglies up front. And, the Ravens lean on their defense anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And pay him. You're going to have to sacrifice some parts, but there's 31 other teams that are going to do the same thing. So
that's what happens in the NFL. You have to pay your quarterback. We've seen it for years, and it will continue to be the trend for years. Yeah.
Ultimately, you'll have to sacrifice, but everyone's in the same boat, and you'll probably end up on the right side of it, I would imagine, if you bought them all. Okay, he asked another question, did Dave, which is a very interesting one. We've both had a bit to think about. And he asked us both who our top 5 free agents are going into this offseason. Kind of a vague one. I'm not entirely sure which way we should go about it. I don't think the 5 guys we're going to say are necessarily the most talented. My list is more players I'm just kind of interested in, and just to see where they're going to go, because I think they could be game changers. It's probably not the top 5 pound for pound list in terms of players, but it's certainly an interesting debate to have anyway. But I will throw it over to you first. Do you want to run down your 5? I imagine there'll be some duplicates anyway, so I'll just chime in. You say one of mine.
Yeah, I'll kind of go from 5 to 1 because I do have them in some kind of order.
Ooh, okay.
I'll start with the boring ones first, but I'll go with Brandon Sheriff, right guard, one of the best, if not potentially the best right guard in the NFL right now. Obviously plays for the football team. They did have him on the franchise tag last year, so he'll be commanding a lot of money, but he's one of the best right guards in the league, adept in the run game and the pass game.
That was a boring first round pick done right. I remember him getting picked in the first round. It's one of them you're like, on draft night, you're like, ugh, but you're like, but also, he's gonna be great, isn't he? Yeah,
he's gonna be really, really good. And number 4, we'll go for Philip Lindsay. This was one of the greatest undrafted free agents we've ever kind of seen in the NFL. And he seems to be completely mismanaged this year, bringing in kind of Melvin Gordon and, having to split back, the backfield time with him. So I'm really intrigued to where he goes, because he was incredible his first 2 years. And I think he was beat up a little bit last year. So there's a franchise running back there that's potentially you can pick up for not a lot, And number 3, I'll go with Juju Smith. I will go with Juju Smith. I was debating whether to put his teammate Bud Dupree here, but I think on my list, kind of Bud Dupree just kind of makes it to 6. So I will go with Juju Smith-Schuster, because Last year, he was slated to be the number one wide receiver kind of target in this free agency kind of slate. He's going to make all the money. He's going to continue his growth away from Antonio Brown. And he didn't live up to it on the field. And there was a lot of off the field stuff that wasn't particularly great. So I'm going to be interested to see where his market value is from NFL teams and where he values himself, because there's going to have to be some wiggle room there. I'm interested to see if the Steelers keep one of their own or really try and clear house to maybe create a new culture. Number 2, I will stay with wide receivers. I go with Allen Robinson. Proper free Allen Robinson kind of time. As Ross has said before, he could be the greatest wide receiver ever. He's just been stuck with Mitch Trubisky and Blake Bortles. And even with Mitch Trubisky this year, and Nick Foles a bit, he's done quite good. So really excited to see where he goes. Hopefully it's to the Colts. And number 1, I'll go with Dak Prescott. I don't need to say any more. Dak Prescott. He probably won't hit the market, but he's scheduled to. So he is the number 1 free agent.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go for my 5 then. Obviously a couple of duplicates. No particular order, but Allen Robinson, add in there. Same reasons, free Allen Robinson, hashtag it. Reply to this podcast with hashtag free Allen Robinson. He deserves to land somewhere. We hope it's the Colts. With the messages that T.Y. Hilton's been writing on jerseys to his teammates, it would appear that he's going to leave the Colts, and there is going to be a gap at wide receiver 1. And even Jim Irsay's comments, although he did say he wanted T.Y. to stay, ultimately he did mention it's going to be a business decision, and the business decision, the smart one really, would be to swap him out with someone like Allen Robinson. But he's going to be sought after. He's going to be well sought after because he's superb. He's got everything, really. There's not much he can't do, really. It's just a brilliant all-rounder as a receiver. And the fact he's managed to put up the numbers he has over the years with the teams he's played with is pretty remarkable. You give him a proper quarterback next year, and he's gonna set the league on fire, I think. Shaq Barrett is there as a free agent this year. May well we'll caveat, some of these will probably stay at their team.
Yeah.
Imagine they're going to get re-signed. If the Bucs let Shaq Barrett go, I'd be amazed, but he deserves to be on this list. He's on this list because he was franchise tagged last year, of course. You may remember. Smart decision that was. Very smart decision from Tampa Bay. Obviously, the franchise tagged him after he kind of came out of nowhere and racked about 18, 19 sacks in a year. I think he was second on the list last year, or was joint with Chandler Jones, I think. Had a monster year, and they tagged him because they were like, well, could be a flash in the pan. You don't, because you never really know. Sometimes these players just have these incredible years. Like, although I still quite like him, Eric Ebron kind of springs to mind at that 16 touchdown year. He's never going to replicate that. But Shaq Barrett, to be fair, another great year. Not quite at the same numbers, but passes the eye test. You watch what he does. Aaron Rodgers was seeing plenty of him on Sunday, for example. He's not worried by these good offensive lines, and he's going to be a great pass rusher for years to come. Leonard Williams is on my list. He's a free agent. Again, I think the Giants would be very, very silly to not re-sign him if they can. He was a rare flashpoint in that Giants team this year. He was one of their better players, particularly down the stretch. I think he was a 3rd overall pick when he was brought in by after a career at USC in the draft by the Jets, ironically. Ended up at the Giants, had a second chance, and he was phenomenal on that defensive line. Gets no real hype because of how bad the Giants were, but he's certainly something to look out for. If he hits the market, I think there's going to be some good teams. There's going to be some kind of top 10 teams looking out for him, 100%. Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones may well have played his last snap in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And although we don't pay running backs on this podcast, as was mentioned 10 minutes ago, someone will. Somebody
will.
And you know what? If you're going to pay a quarterback, if you're going to pay anyone, pay one with about 40 touchdowns in the last 2 years. I mean, he knows where the end zone is. He can sniff out an end zone, Aaron Jones. He really can. And behind a good offensive line, and there's a few of them knocking around the league at the moment as well, he could do some serious damage. So that's a really interesting one to look out for. It's just an interesting one to see where Aaron Jones lands, because I don't think he'll be back in Green Bay next year. I can't really see that happening. And finally, of course, you mentioned him, Dak Prescott. Probably is pound for pound the best player in this free agency. Has to be. Certainly going to be the best paid, you'd imagine, assuming that knee's all right. Just going to be really fun to see where he lands, because when he went down in week 6 or whatever it was, week 4, he was kind of scheduled to be the story of the offseason, wasn't it? And
it was.
He's kind of, you're just going to the second page before you even get to him at this point. I mean, people have forgotten about the Dak Prescott situation because of what's happened with Rodgers and Watson and Stafford and all these guys. because of the injury, it's gone a little bit cold, which probably plays into the hands of the Dallas Cowboys, to be fair, if they want to re-sign him, which is fair enough. But expect that to pick up some heat in the next month or so, and it's still going to be interesting to see what happens, because if he does stay with Dallas Cowboys, which is the most likely option, they're going to have to pay some big money. So it's interesting to see whether they're going to do that because of the salary cap implications, as we've just discussed with the Ravens.
Yeah,
right?
I can't believe the Dak Prescott kind of storyline, because now it's led to essentially, if he does kind of hit free agency, there's another two on free agents, but him, Matt Stafford, and Deshaun Watson all changing teams. Incredibly good quarterbacks.
Oh, massively.
So good.
Interesting. I'm glad we did that one. I'm glad we did that question. Thank you, Dave, for sending that in, because it's kind of kicks us off a little bit. Obviously, we've got a game to talk about next week. We'll get that out of the way. We'll get that out of the way first. But obviously, the off season is fast approaching. It really is, and we're going to get all in on free agency, all in on the draft. So it just reminds you, kind of looking through spot track and seeing who the free agents are this year. It kind of reminds you how many storylines are going to come out this year and how much talent there is. Generally, it's going to be really, really fun, especially, like I say, with the salary cap situation. It makes it really interesting. What the hell are the Saints going to do? I've got no idea. Right. Ben Talbot also asked a question this week, and I'll read it out to you now. And I'm going to throw this one to Harry because he's better with the numbers, frankly. Ben says, I know it's been touched on before, and I appreciate if there's much more important things to talk about for now. No, Ben, it's fine. Don't you worry about it. You can ask anything in the mailbag. But I still don't fully understand the cap situation regarding trading Carson Wentz away and the likelihood / implications of such a deal to the Eagles if and when you have time. Well, we've got time now. And in all honesty, I'm a little bit confused too. So, resident salary cap expert Harry Dennis, as he laughs, would you like to digress on the Carson Wentz situation if the Philadelphia Eagles can find a trade partner this offseason?
Yeah, let's try and put my B at GCSE level maths into practice. And we do understand as a whole that the cap as a whole and the monetary kind of contract values of the NFL are quite they're a foreign concept to us following kind of English sports apart from rugby league. It's like, got a salary cap?
It does. But it's literally 100 times less. So
yeah. So we've kind of spoke about it between me and Ross, but if you want us to kind of have a dedicated like mini podcast or YouTube episode where we talk about everything to do with the salary cap in general and stuff, if you want to see that from us, let us know. Because it's something we've talked about before, because we would be able to then fully research it so we can have, wider breadth of knowledge for it as well. And we could pass on to you. So let us know. But that is for another day. Now is the actual current implications of the Carson Wentz contract. So Carson Wentz, at the start of the 2019 season, signed a 4-year, $128 million extension with various kind of salary implications at various stages of the contract. But we'll talk about what it means if they were to release him like today or trade him right now. If they were to get rid of him kind of right now, the kind of pre the 1st of June, don't know why it's the 1st of June, but that's when some of the contracts kind of lock in for guaranteed money as well. If they were to release him, they would have to pay, not him, but it will be charged $60 million on the salary cap, which means they essentially pay $60 million to not have him on the roster, which if the salary cap drops to $175 million, it's a lot of your roster you're paying for someone who's not going to play for you. And that's in dead cap money. You can't do anything with that.